Alors,
Bon,
on va faire le hold-up du siècle. Tu commences, je commence.
ben écoute, je vais... Attends, moi j'avais... Ah voilà. The Age of Innocence de Scorsese. Pour moi, une des plus belles fins. Voilà, une des plus belles fins dans l'histoire du cinéma.
Restons un peu aussi en Italie, d'une certaine manière.
Hein?
Scorsese, Rossellini. J'ai vu tout à l'heure en passant qu'il y avait Rossellini, Bergman. Film, Luc, que nous avons revu, mon frère et moi, beaucoup de fois, dont on parle beaucoup. Et des trois, celui que j'ai le moins vu finalement, c'est Voyage en Italie, Journey to Italy. Ce sera donc une occasion de le revoir et c'est formidable parce que j'ai 3 DVD en un.
Oui.
The 10 records I listen to the most. Really, I've talked about all of those records on this channel. I did a series of videos where I talked about my 200 favorite albums. Somewhere in that list are the 10 records that I listen to the most. So these are the runners up. So part of that is who are your favorite bands, who are your favorite artists. And I mean, those are just the records that I'm listening to the most. This one was actually in the top 200 records, my favorite 200 records. And this one was pretty high up there, but Uncle Tupelo is always a go-to for me. Chris, the Long Coat, started this. I'm probably going to show a few records that he showed, or at least the bands that he showed, because we have that in common. Sunvolt, Wide Swing Tremolo, outside of Trace, this is the Sunvolt album that I listen to the most. Wilco was tough, and I got to talk about a Wilco record, and Wilco was tough. Recently, as my son Sam has gotten into Wilco, I've been listening to a lot more of Being There, A Ghost is Born. He loves Star Wars, loves that album. In fact, of all the albums, that's the one that I can play all the way through for sure. And Sam loves Star Wars. The other ones I kind of select songs. But for me, honestly, in recent years, the one that I've spun the most is Sky Blue Sky. Okay, my two favorite Spoon records are Kill the Moonlight and Ga 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 Ga. I would say the one that I spin the most outside of those two is the one that came between them, Gimme Fiction from 2005. I'm pretty sure Chris heard this one. The River by Bruce Springsteen. It just hits all the notes. It's got everything on it. It's got the Heartland rock, the more contemplative, slower numbers. It's got everything. And it's a double album, so you're going to get your fill. Sticking with some of my favorites, Aretha. I can just put on Aretha anytime. Like, no matter what my mood, I can listen to Aretha. And I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You is a classic. Chris might have shown this one too. I can't remember. This is Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, The Harrow and the Harvest. Now, she just started putting out a lot of her records on vinyl. So this was always one that my wife and I could just listen to in the car together, just about any time. But whenever I'm in the mood for some R&B and some soul, and this is, again, a record that wasn't in my favorite 200 albums, but is just outside of it, I can always rely on Solomon Burke. And this is an absolute classic record, If You Need Me from 1963. This is one of the best soul records ever. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for some fun, easygoing, not having to think too hard pop rock. You know, and whether that's like power pop like Big Star or some of the more alternative, like more modern power pop like Sloan or Teenage Fan Club or Matthew Sweet. I just want to hear like, you know, Elvis Costello and the Attractions. This year's model is definitely one of my most listened to records of all time. But again, it was on that list. Top 10 album for me of all time. What else scratches that itch? This one always has. East Side Story by Squeeze. When I first got into this album in high school, there was more select songs and I would kind of skip through it. But as time has gone on, I love every second of this record. Now, if I just want some classic rock, there's one band that goes all the way back for me, all the way back to probably elementary school. And that's the Allman Brothers Band. Now, Fillmore East is probably my favorite and probably the best thing that they've ever released. But if I want something that's a little bit more straightforward, and I don't want to sit through any of the longer jams, Out of Wild South is the record for me. There's only 7 songs, but from the get-go, from Revival, and then Don't Keep Me Wondering, and then Midnight Runner, In Memory of Elizabeth Reed is an all-time classic. Please Call Home is an outstanding bluesy kind of ballad. Oh, just Greg Allman's vocal on that song is fantastic. And then Leave My Blues at Home is probably one of my favorite Allman Brothers Band songs. The worst song on this album is just the cover of Hoochie Coochie Man. And it's still fantastic. You can't go wrong with Out of Wild South. Have you ever had a band that you never really called your favorite band, but the older you get, you kind of realize, I think really they're one of my favorite bands. Now, I definitely think that they are America's greatest band. And I'm choosing Green by REM. And the reason why is because REM has been with me ever since like I was in middle school. They're just a band that a lot of my friends have always listened to. And Green just hits everything. It kind of foreshadows like what you're going to get with Out of Time and Automatic for the People with some of the acoustic numbers. But then there's still the rock songs, college radio pop rock songs. Pop Song 89, Orange Crush. But then there's the, I think, best song on the album, very contemplative, World Leader Pretend. It's just a masterful composition. And this album just is the perfect kind of stopgap between the IRS years and where they would go with Warner Brothers. Green by REM. Some bonus material here. I'm going to talk about a record that I've been listening to more than any other record recently. The album is called 3D Country by the band Geese. Now, first of all, this album is absolutely as absurd as that artwork is. Second thing you need to know is I can't stand the band name Geese. Unless it's some kind of like humorous kind of aside or reference to swans, then okay, I could maybe get behind it. Now, their first record I paid absolutely no attention to. I didn't even know it was there. And it was on Partisan Records, which is the label that bands like Idols and Fontaines DC are on. I'm really not into Fontaines DC. I've just never really, nothing that they've ever put out has really grabbed me. I'd rather just go back and listen to older post-punk from the 70s. And Geese's first album, was it called Projector? I think. Anyway, it is very much in that same vein. And I think that's why I never heard of them or paid any attention to them, even though they were getting a lot of press at the time, because I think they just kind of got lost in the muddle of all of this post-punk revival stuff that's happening, like especially over in the UK. Now, this record couldn't be any further away from that. And it's still got its moments of post-punk. Definitely on the opening track, 2122, was just a blast of heavy, loud guitars and just pummeling drums and bass. But you still don't really get a taste of what the record is just from that first track. You really get a little bit more of the taste on the self-titled track, which is the second track called 3D Country. And in comes some really kind of jammy, I wouldn't say country rock. So 3D Country is not to insinuate what this music sounds like. It's not an alternative country record. But there is this kind of 70s kind of jammy kind of guitar rock that you would find in that, from that era of the 70s where you had like bands like, you know, Poco and Little Feat and a wide range of bands. But there's also touches of R&B and soul and funk. I wouldn't say avant-garde, but definitely experimental kind of rock music. It's still all fusion of different kinds of rock genres. And this record is just all over the map. And at times it's kind of hard to take seriously, like this album cover or like their band name, and especially their singer, Cameron Winter. When I say over the top, I mean over the top. but I also say gloriously over the top. Like a lot of singers make you think of one person or maybe 2 or 3 people. He makes me think of about 15 different people. Like at times I'm thinking he reminds me of Warren Zevon. At times he gets in this deeper register and he reminds me of Nick Cave, but it's kind of like a goofy Nick Cave, like not a serious Nick Cave. He reminds me obviously of Mick Jagger. And then just a slew of other people that I could think of, depending on how he sounds at the time. He even gets up into a falsetto in places. He definitely reminds me of David Johansen from the New York Dolls. Now, I think a lot of people are just going to be turned off right away by Cameron Winter's vocals, and they're just not going to be able to handle this band. And then there are other people that are just going to be like, it just sounds so like it's just aping like all these other sounds and stuff. But, and there are bands like that already, but, not like a band like Foxygen or the Lemon Twigs or, God forbid, Greta Van Fleet. They're not aping sounds to sound retro. Like they're paying homage to classic rock for sure and combining it with this crazy post-punk energy, but it sounds very modern. Like they're not trying to sound like a band from the past. It's this kind of carefreeness and this kind of like, we're going to break loose of the chains and the pitfalls of being pinpointed as some kind of like post-punk band, like, or some kind of Brooklyn band. Now, the greatest thing about this record is that it's just a lot of fucking fun. And they're just young kids, like 20, 21 years old, that are just having fun. And when I listen to it, I'm having fun. And you know what? Yeah, I'm a self-described sad bastard, but every once in a while, man, I just want to put that shit down. I think there are a lot of people that are just like not even going to be able to like even remotely take this seriously. Well, guess what? You're not supposed to take it seriously, but that's the problem, is that I think that maybe some of you are just probably a little too serious to even get into this. But it's not wacky like a new Weezer album. There's something cool and very determined about it, This is definitely one of my favorite records of the year so far, and I absolutely love it. And I thought about, including some sound clips, but not one song can really even describe it. So I thought it'd be really fun to cut together one long sample of the record. It's just like a bunch of little bits together. And if it's going to sound as enticing as I think it is, then I think maybe some of you are going to at least give this record a try. 3D Country by Geese. Again, this is definitely going to be on, my favorite albums of 2023 video, the end of the year. I just don't see it getting knocked out. I just absolutely love it. Stories of my life, I'm giving you the runaround. I used to cut 'em up. I used to tear it down. I've got eyes for anything moving. Fell in love with a tumbleweed. We could live in the sea, just you and me.
Digital gramophone makes no sense.